Welcome everyone, this is Shadi Abu Yusuf and a new episode of Classroom Management, and today we'll be talking about rapport. So let's start by defining what rapport is. And rapport is actually the relationship between the teacher and the students in the classroom. So one more time. So rapport is the relationship between the teacher and the students in the classroom. And there are three main things that would make your rapport really strong in the classroom. So let's have a look at the first one. And the first one, we would say empathy. And what do we mean by empathy here? Empathy is caring for a student's feelings in the classroom, thinking about the thoughts, So because finally we're human beings, the relationship is not only a teacher and a student. So we need to show empathy from time to another. We need to show understanding. It's not all about teaching. It's not all about skills. It's not all about language. It's also about being friendly with our students, being nice to them. And let me give you an example of what I mean by this. If one student, has a problem, you need to show concern and you need to ask your student about this problem, and you need to offer support. And also, if you feel that one student does not look okay, then you need to do something also about it. You need to talk to this student and see why he or she is not feeling all right in a classroom. We're not machines. Of course, we're not supposed to do like this teacher who has a student coming late to the classroom, and then the student knocked on the door. The teacher opened, and the teacher said, "Hey, why are you late?" And then this student said, "Really sorry, my dad has an accident yesterday." So the teacher said, "No, wait a minute. Your dad had an accident yesterday." So everybody, repeat after me. His dad had an accident yesterday. Oh my God, don't do that. For God's sake, have a heart. Respond to your students' problems instead of focusing on grammar like crazy all the time. No, appreciate your students' ideas and respond to the real messages. It's not only about, teaching language or skills, right? Okay, now, so the first point is empathy. Now, what about the second point? The second point is authenticity. And what do we mean by authenticity? And authenticity is making everything in a classroom as natural as possible. Because we need to remember as teachers that classrooms are to prepare students for real life. So we need to make the kind of interaction we have in the classroom as authentic as possible. And we need to make students feel that this is real and this is something that we can take out of the classroom and apply in reality. That's really important. And on teacher training courses, I keep telling my candidates that this is what they need to do. They need to respond to students naturally, and they need also to give them what would help them in reality, in real life. For example, why would I teach something like postcards when nobody writes postcards anymore? It is better if I'm going to teach them how to write WhatsApp messages, or maybe how to write a Facebook status or something. But to get them to write a postcard, it's not real now, because people don't do it. So why would I spend all this time to teach them something that they wouldn't use in reality? That's for example. So again, we want the classroom to be as authentic as possible. And I remember, and this is a bit funny, on a teacher training course, I had this candidate, and she had 5 students in a classroom, and she wanted the students to work in pairs. And of course, I was observing. And so she put 2 students together. And what she was supposed to do is to put the other 3 together in one group. So 3 working together and 2 working together. But she didn't do that. What she decided to put 2 together. And then she looked at the last one and she said, work with your partner, and his partner was an empty chair. Imagine that, right? And you should have seen the look on this student's face, and I'm talking about adults here. And the guy looked next to him is like, so it's as if he was thinking, is this teacher crazy or what? Right? So again, imagine the situation, two students together, and someone is working with a chair. This is a real story. But the funny part is, during feedback, when the teacher was giving feedback to students, and she asked this guy to speak, the guy she paired him with the chair, with the empty chair. She asked him to give her an answer, and he said, "Oh no, ask my friend." And again, everybody laughed. That was a very sincere answer. What are you doing? This classroom needs to be authentic. And even if you're teaching students on a teacher training course, as we always say, plan your lessons, but teach reality. So in reality, if you feel that there is something that students need and you haven't put that on your lesson plan, you need to respond to your students' needs. It's not about following lesson plans blindly, right? And the third item that is very important also when it comes to rapport is respect. You need to show your students respect. If you respect your students, they respect you. So don't try to underestimate the ways of thinking, to underestimate their intelligence. Don't try to belittle their opinions, or to say something like, "Oh, no, that's rubbish. I don't agree with this." Oh, no, that's really bad. You know what I mean? You need to show your students respect in the use of your own body language, and also in what you say to them. And we're going to come to a part in this episode when we talk about things you need to avoid because they might cause your rapport to go down or to decrease in the English classroom. Right, good, wonderful. Now let's move to, or let's sum up one more time the 3 points we talked about. So we talked about empathy, that's number 1, authenticity, that's number 2, and number 3, respect. Right? Okay, now let's move to things that we should avoid as teachers. Things that shouldn't be doing in a classroom in order to build successful rapport. Okay, let's see this together. So, and the first point is, you need to avoid showing no interest in a student's answers. In other words, all the time, you need to show your students that you're interested in what they say. Someone might say, "Shadi, is it important?" Very important. Because remember, as we said at the very beginning, it's not only about teaching language and skills and strategies, it's about responding to messages. And always remember that in reality, we need to listen to the content of what people say. We don't only focus on grammar and how they pronounce vocabulary or whatever. Right, so, and let me give you an example from a real classroom. Imagine this situation. Your students are sitting in a circle and you're talking to your students, right? Asking them about a topic. So you might say something like, okay, so what do you think about this problem here? And then one student said, I guess the government needs to take some actions to solve this problem. And then you show no reaction to this student whatsoever, and you decide to move to the second one. What about you? No, don't do that. If one student gave you an answer, you have to show interest. How would you do this? By saying, "Oh, really? So what do you think the government should do?" Show interest. Ask follow-up questions. That's how you respond to students. But don't respond to students saying something, asking someone, "Okay, so what do you like to do in your free time?" And then someone says, "Reading." And then, okay, right. And then you move to the second one. No, wait. Ask this student, "Oh, lovely. And what kind of books do you read?" And then he says, for example, "Novels." "Oh, really? Do you have a favorite writer?" So that's how you show interest in what students say. But just asking a student, what do you like to do in your free time? Travel. Oh yeah. And what do you like to do in your free time? Oh, come on. That's not a real conversation. That's not sincere, right? Good. Another thing that we need to avoid is embarrassing students when they make mistakes. Now let's remember that we all make mistakes, right? I mean, that's one of the main characteristics of our nature as human beings, that we're not perfect. We make mistakes all the time, all of us, teachers and students. So again, you need to be tolerant with the students' mistakes, and you need to be sensitive when dealing with these mistakes and errors. And what I mean by sensitive, for example, if you're trying to give feedback to students on their errors, please don't say the names. It's really bad. Like, don't say, John said this, and I believe it's completely wrong. For God's sake, why are you doing this to John, eh? Why? Don't do that. There is no benefit from saying who made this mistake. It doesn't help, right? So please don't mention your students' names when they make mistakes. Just say something like, I heard someone say, I go to the stadium yesterday. What do you think? Is that correct? So again, you don't have to mention people's names and make them feel bad about their errors. And also, if it happens during the plenary when the teacher is talking to students and students are talking to the teacher, and then you heard one student says something, that is grammatically incorrect, don't make fun of this. Of course you can correct during plenary, because that's the time for correction, because it's TS now, and maybe it's the time for open class feedback. But you need to learn how to do this sensitively. Okay, you don't need to hurt students' feelings, like say, oh my God, how come you say I goes? No, come on, no. Don't make fun of students, have a heart. You're a teacher, you're an example, right? And don't make students feel bad about their errors, or they will never share again in your lesson. They won't feel safe, right? Now, another thing that we need to avoid is giving students no opportunity to speak. And I know a lot of teachers who do this unconsciously. Students are trying to share what they have, they're trying to speak, maybe during the plenary, you're giving content feedback on ideas, and you're asking one student, and you say to this student something like, okay, so tell me what your friend said about this. And then the student starts speaking, saying, okay, my friend said that pollution was a big problem because it might cause a lot of diseases. And then you interrupt your students and they say, oh yeah, I do agree with you. Yeah, it causes a lot of diseases. Yeah, wonderful point. And then you move to another. Come on, don't interrupt your students all the time whenever they try to say something. And sometimes teachers do something that is even worse. They interrupt students not to move and give the floor to another. They interrupt the students so that they speak themselves. So say, yeah, I believe, pollution, it causes a lot of diseases. Yeah, I mean, I've got a friend of mine. And then you start talking about yourself and your friends and your family. For God's sake, you're the most professional speaker in the classroom. You don't need to practice here. Students need to practice. Give them the opportunity to speak. Don't keep interrupting them all the time. It makes your rapport go down. It's not good at all. Right. Another point is treating adult students like children. Oh my God. And I've seen this a lot, and it's catastrophic. And the reason why this happens is because some teachers who decide to start teaching adults, they come from the background of teaching young learners. So those people have been teaching young learners, for example, for years, and then they decide that they want to start teaching adults. And the problem that they bring some of the practices they used to do as children, and they think that these practices would work well with adults. When you need to be careful when you do this. Like, I remember I was on a teacher training course, and I had this candidate who used to teach primary students for kind of 10 to 12 years or something. And then of course, we provided her with teaching practice to students, but they were university students, they were adults. And then whenever one student said something, good, that's how she praised them. She said, really nice. And then another one answers, excellent. And then another one answers, and then you should have seen students' faces on this situation. Oh my God. I mean, I remember one lady was sitting in front of the classroom, and she was looking at her like, I mean, it was like, why are you doing this? Again, it's a habit, and you need to be careful. Don't move the habits of your teaching with primary to adults, unless they are appropriate for both ages. But always think about the age group. And so such exclamation, oh, come on, how does it work with adults at all? So someone might ask, well, Shadi, did this happen before? I'd say, well, yeah, I've seen it before. You ask a candidate to prepare material for a lesson, and then they go bring flashcards, cartoon flashcards, some flashcards that only suit children. And then they start, hanging Mickey Mouse and Donald Duck on the board, and some adult students feel a bit, uncomfortable. It's like, because they feel that's a bit childish here. You know what I mean? If you're teaching the word swimming, but it's better to check Google pictures and bring, a picture of an adult in a swimming pool, for example, better than bringing, for example, Donald Duck swimming. I mean, so always cater for the age group you're teaching. That would be my advice, because that would support your rapport as well. And also, something else that you need to avoid in your classes in order to build up good rapport is being too formal with the students. Yes, you're the teacher, but you need to be a friend of your students. And I'm talking here especially about the Egyptian context, and because I'm talking about teaching adults, I'm not talking about teaching teens or teaching primary students in these episodes. I'm focused on teaching adults, so that's why I will mention university teaching in Egypt. Not in general, but I know that these practices are there. And again, you need to be close to your university students. You need to be a friend with them. Don't be too formal. And sometimes weird things happen in some contexts in Egypt, where some university professors shout at their students. Why on earth would you shout at a student? I mean, shouting. I mean, I can understand all strict procedures and measures that can be taken with the university students, but I don't understand how shouting will help. I don't understand how swearing at the students would help. I don't understand how dismissing a student in a humiliating way would help. I mean, for no good reason, of course. So, for God's sake, don't be too formal with the students. Don't build barriers between you and students. Try to break these barriers. And at the same time, that doesn't mean that you lose your respect. It doesn't mean this at all. Okay, so you keep this fine distance between you and students. They respect you, but at the same time, they like you so much. That's really important. And again, another point, you need to avoid calling your adult students boys and girls. And someone might say, But Shadi, does it really happen that some teachers call their students boys and girls? And I say, yeah, I've seen it so many times again on teacher training courses when I'm training teachers that they teach adults and then they start saying, come on, boys and girls, boys and girls, boys and girls. These are adults. They are your age, you know what I mean? You can't call them boys and girls, okay? You might say guys, come on people, ladies and gentlemen, but not boys and girls for God's sake. And I remember a teacher on a training course told me that she did this while she was teaching an adult class, and then she said something like, good girl. And then the lady looked at her and said, I'm not a girl, I'm a lady. You don't call me girl in classroom. So again, and of course the student is absolutely right. Don't put yourself in embarrassing situations when dealing with adults. Adults are adults, okay? They are your age, deal with them like this. Yes, they are students, but they are your age. So, and respect is supposed to be for all ages, not only adults, right? Again, another point that we need to avoid is showing lack of respect for students' cultures. And we're human beings, and we have our own differences, and there are a lot of different cultures that are not completely like yours. You need to show respect to others. I remember on a teacher training course, I had this wonderful candidate, still remember this situation, and he was supposed to teach a lesson about girls' night out. That was the topic of the lesson, girls' night out, and it was about going to bars and having fun, drinking and all that stuff. His students or his class was divided into two groups of students. Most of them were refugees from different countries. Some of them are Muslims and the others are Christians. But all of them are strict believers of their own religions. So strict Muslims and strict Christians as well. And the guy was teaching this lesson, which is girls' night out, staying in bars and all that stuff. And he started the leading. He wanted to get them interested in the topic. So he started by asking one student, oh, okay, so tell me, where do you go on the weekend? And then the student said, we go to the church. And so he tried to get back to the topic of the lesson, and then he said, so you don't go out and go to bars and have fun? And so they said, no, we don't do that. Then he was a smarter student, a smart candidate, I'm sorry. He felt that this class is different now, and that the main topic of the lesson is teaching, is actually clashing with those students' culture. And he also realized that the other half of the class is Muslims, and then also they're strict. So he was so smart to change the nature of the topic immediately by saying, oh, wonderful, so tell me about the activities you do at the church. And then these students started to speak, and then so what about you? And then he moved to a Muslim girl, and she said, well, we go to the mosque every Friday. Wonderful. And what kind of activities do you do in the mosque? And it was like that. And it was amazing. And he achieved the objectives of the lesson, and everything was perfect. So again, be sensitive to your students' culture, understand their culture, and don't try to bring topics that might make them feel bad and uncomfortable in the classroom. Right, and this is our coming point here, which is what we call PARSNIPS. And when I say PARSNIPS, I don't mean the vegetable. What I mean by PARSNIPS, this is an acronym that we use to refer to some taboo topics in ELT, in English language teaching, topics that we need to avoid in the classroom. We don't need to touch in the classroom. Why we need to avoid these topics? Because they cause problems in the classroom. We try to build harmony with our students. Then bringing these topics in might affect this really negatively and badly. And PARSNIPS stands for, the P stands for politics, A, alcohol, R, religion, S, sex, N, narcotics, I, isms, P, pork, right? Okay, wonderful. So parsnips, that's what we call them. And let's go through these topics quickly. And politics is about people kill each other for politics, okay? And so again, don't try to bring politics in the classroom. Someone might say, but Chadi, freedom of speech, and we teachers, we need to be free because we live in the free world and all that stuff. Yeah, but wait a minute. Who said that freedom does not have limits? Well, if freedom has no limits, we wouldn't have armies or policemen out there, right? Freedom has limits because you're free as long as you don't harm others. You don't hurt other people's feelings. That's what I understand about freedom, and that's why we try to avoid these topics in the classroom, because again, you can't control the students sometimes. So someone might say something bad about a party, a political party, and then the other person start defending this political party because his father belongs to this political party, and you end up having a chaotic classroom. And all the rapport you were trying to build goes down. And students, you were trying to run wonderful activities so that the students, become, to break the ice between the students, and then everything is lost. So no politics. Don't talk about alcohol, because again, know the culture. If you're teaching in a Muslim country now, that's a big problem. These are non-alcoholic countries. And if you say, no, but alcohol is okay. Now some students say, no, it's not okay because of our religion. And then problems happen. Why would you do this? Avoid it, right? Something like talking about religion. Someone might say, but my religion is great, it's fantastic. Yeah, sure, we know that. But please, you're coming to teach English, okay? Not to convert students to your religion. Okay, so what you do, if you want to prove to the world and to people that your religion is great, then prove it with your manners. Prove it with your manners and how decent you are to people and how supportive you are. Not by bringing religious discussions in the classroom, discussions about beliefs, and then this is just, I don't believe in that, and you say, no, I don't believe in this, and then, no, don't do this. Also, don't bring topics related to sex, as we said, narcotics, because people are different about narcotics. And also isms, communism, capitalism, and everyone believes whatever he or she wants, so be careful. And finally, pork. And some people say about the last S, some people would say sports. Especially if you feel that this might cause tension in the classroom. But how? Sports have been a wonderful topic. Yeah. I don't mean sports in that big sense. I mean, that there are two football teams, for example. And that you've got fans of this football team and fans from the other football team in the same classroom. And that if you bring this in, like talking about Liverpool, Barcelona, talking about, this or that, and then people will start fighting about it. If you feel that there is a sport topic that might cause problems in the classroom, please don't bring it up, okay? And we know that there are some accidents in different parts of the world where some people killed each other in football matches. So we don't bring this kind of conflict in the classroom. We want students to like each other, support each other, right? Now, So again, let's sum up the main points we talked about today. So we talked about three main principles for rapport: empathy, authenticity, respect. And also we talked about things we need to avoid when we're in the classroom, and like showing no interest in students' answers, embarrassing them when correcting their errors, giving them no opportunity to express themselves, treating them like children, being too formal with them, calling them boys and girls, showing lack of respect for the culture, bringing inappropriate materials or topics for discussions. And one last thing someone might say, Shadi, what about body language? That's what I advise you actually to do. I advise you to visit the episodes at the very beginning of this series about gestures, using gestures in the classroom, and you will know what gestures we should be using and what gestures we need to avoid in the English classroom. Finally, the last question is, rapport important on courses like CELTA, CERTIS or CELTES? Of course it is. And there is a criterion on a CELTES syllabus that says, establishing, which is 1D, it says establishing good rapport with learners and ensuring they are fully involved in learning activities. Thank you so much. It was lovely meeting you again, and see you in another episode. And please, if you like this video, don't forget to press like, subscribe also to the channel, leave a comment and activate notifications. And don't forget, you can always visit my blog, which is www.shadi.blog, or write me an email at me@shadi.blog. Thank you so much. Bye-bye.